She didn't want to get her branding pictures done. She didn't want to show up on social media. And when she did, she had to make sure like everything was perfect. It's almost like a compensation for but for that part that she felt had like wasn't perfect, so to speak. And actually, once she sort of made peace with the fact that she hadn't done anything wrong, she wasn't broken, and none of us are perfect. And that's the whole point, actually, let's just show up as our imperfect selves and be happy with that, because and it's really changed how she shows up in her business. She had her branding pictures done. She goes live all the time. She's not worrying about it now. She's not waiting until she's got all her makeup on, because we've pulled on that thread. And that's how I kind of like to talk about it. We're pulling on those threads. Let's have a look at what are all your shoulds around how you should be, and specifically about how you think you should look.
Welcome to the Wedding Business Growth Coach podcast, a podcast dedicated to sharing everything you need in bite-sized episodes to set up your wedding business for success and get your diary fully booked, full of those dream wedding clients. You're here with me, Jen Maynard, Wedding Business Growth Coach and founder of the Boho Bride Guide wedding blog and supply directory. Each episode is full of value and structured around my wedding business anchor fundamentals framework to give you straightforward, step-by-step activities to put in place into your business that will position yourself as the go-to wedding supplier within your specialism. Let's go! Hello and welcome to this episode. It is super exciting to have you with us today. And I'm doubly excited because I have a guest on the show today. I'm welcoming the fabulous Tamsin Broster to the podcast. She's an anti-diet body image coach and helps women transform how they see themselves and how they value themselves. The last few episodes, we've been covering how we become the face of our business and the benefits around building our business that this has on it. But I wanted to delve deeper into what is going on underneath the makeup exterior that you see today, and what may well be holding you back from becoming that face of your business and building those closer connections to your online audience that ultimately will convert into inquiries to grow your business. So welcome, Tamsin. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. This is really cool.
Fabulous. Could you share with us a little bit about your world and what you specialize in?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm Tamsin, like you said. I'm an anti-diet body image coach, and I help women show up in their lives, with confidence and feeling really like they value themselves, because women are typically socialized to play small, not, we worry about how we look. We're told that our value is based on, and our worth is based on how we look. And I help women to unpack that so that they can actually live a life without all that stuff attached to it, without feeling like they should look a certain way, or like you kind of mentioned in the beginning, should have makeup on, or should have this on, and should do this, or should be thinner, should be prettier, all this stuff. So I help women unpack that so they can just be themselves and be true to themselves and enjoy their lives without all that hanging over them.
Brilliant. And I think for us as wedding business owners growing our business, and we may be at the start of that journey, we've got to grips with the social media world and how we can showcase maybe our products and services. But when it comes to maybe showing our face and actually becoming that face that people recognize and they associate like the brand to you as that business owner, that is something that definitely plays on people's minds, that there are various sort of barriers and things that actually turn us away from doing this. And so I'd love to pick your brains, Tamsin, around firstly, how might this be showing up for people, and what tends for people to avoid this scenario of going in front of the camera, or going to networking events, or being that front of your business?
Yeah, I think it's really common. I think I've seen this a lot, which is why I've started steering my business in this direction, to help women who have their own businesses, to help them get more visible, because so much, or I see it so often. And when I had clients, a lot of clients last year who had their own businesses, and many of them didn't want to get their branding pictures done. They didn't want to go live. They didn't want to talk to the camera or it just felt odd. It feels unsettling. Mm-hmm. And what I've been trying to do is help people understand why that is, because like I said in the beginning, like women are typically socialized to be people pleasers and keep the peace and stay small. We're complimented on how we look. Our body size typically is a really big thing there as well. And, value tied up in what we look like. Mm-hmm. So quite often you'll see that people are, they can only go on camera when there's filters attached. But then there's this kind of like a feeling of, okay, if I've only ever been on my social media with filters on, what are people going to think of me when they meet me in real life? And it's that fear. So then they stop themselves from going forward to meet people in real life. And, people hate I understand it because it makes sense, but people do just hate talking to a camera. They hate kind of watching things back, or they worry about how their voice sounds and all that kind of stuff. But it all comes back to the same thing. It's all about our body image and how we value ourselves and our own self-worth. We're not actually really worried about what other people think of us really deep down. But it's seeking that validation. It's wanting to still people please. All the time we're making content, we might be thinking, oh gosh, is this what my clients want to hear about? Rather than talking about what you want to talk about and really bringing your own personality into it. And it can be very hard to do, but that's a lot of what's going on behind it, is that we don't like seeing ourselves in pictures. We don't like seeing ourselves on video. And if you, let's say like me, I've got 2 kids. If you are someone who is got a family and you are typically shying away from the camera in your family, you're not suddenly going to jump on to TikTok, to Instagram, to your Facebook Lives with ease. That's going to be hard because you're already holding yourself back from that.
Yeah, no, I totally. And actually, for someone that I feel generally comfortable, I still get butterflies, I still get certain things happen, but I feel more comfortable than ever to be in front, mostly because of practice and time and, investing in that. But even I can relate to what you said, things like my son was ill for the last month. And because I haven't had makeup on, my Instagram has gone much quieter because, I haven't put my daily makeup on, and it's almost like my war paint kind of thing. And like you said, if people are used to seeing me with lipstick and my hair done and that sort of thing, and then if I turn up looking like a mess, like I have done the last, but warranted because there's been lots of things going on, I haven't then turned up, and I definitely acknowledge that throughout. And then you get the whole guilt about not being present on your socials, and it's just this like turmoil of events that actually, if we felt more comfortable in our own skin to turn up as we are, with no filters, with no makeup, and so don't get me wrong, I get the whole, I feel more confident with makeup on, and I feel the best version of me, and I do it for me. But I also should feel like that without makeup on, and that's the area that personally for me I'm working on. So yeah,
and
resonated.
I think that what I try and help clients with is help them unpack, like, how is your self-worth attached to that thing? Because I wear makeup, I'm wearing makeup now, and I sometimes don't, but it doesn't change how I show up in my life, in my social media or anything else like that. Because if we waited until we always had our hair perfectly or always had our makeup on and stuff like that, we're missing opportunities to connect with people. And the social media especially is such a busy place, and even in real life it's a really busy place. Networking is busy. You have tiny weeny opportunities to kind of get across to people what you do, what you're passionate about, all that stuff. If you're worrying about how you look, or you don't even show up because actually your self-worth is attached to how you feel that day, or to your self-worth is attached to how you look, as it is for so many women, this is what slows us down. And again, I think a lot of this contributes to why we're not earning as much, why we're not putting ourselves out there, why our businesses, it takes a lot to run your own business. It takes a heck of a lot, and it takes consistency and showing up and all this stuff. And we do all these courses, we do lots and lots of different things to help us get these businesses off the ground. But quite often we ignore this one thing, which is actually our body image and our self-image. And there's so much of that we kind of don't unpack because we're not unpacking it with anybody, because there's, people aren't coming to me for that stuff because they think it's separate. It's not separate. It's exactly the same thing, and it will be the thing that's holding people back.
Definitely. And so for women that are looking to increase their visibility but are feeling those things that we have very much talked about, what's actually going on? Why do we closely attach that fear element to becoming more visible? What is going on there?
Well, I mean, there could be lots of things going on. I think everybody's story is kind of different, but I think we have to really kind of trace it back to how we have felt about ourselves our whole life. What has been reinforced by our families, our caregivers, typically our main caregivers and our mothers and grandmothers and all that kind of stuff. What messaging do we get about not necessarily our body, but what messaging have they been saying about themselves, about their worth and how they show up? Did you grow up in a household where, your mum or main caregiver was kind of picking themselves apart, was saying, oh gosh, I can't possibly wear that. I'm too old, too fat, too whatever, all those kind of things, all that negative, like body image narrative, it filters down. And we then internalize that as small children, as young girls, as, oh, actually, I need to look good. I need to stay thin to be valuable. We don't have any ability to kind of filter that through as something that is nonsense, because we're too young. We're internalizing that over and over again. Then you've got social media. There's not much representation on television for people in bigger bodies, or, people, it's like tokenistic representation. And I think there's so much going on there. I always refer back to like programs like Love Island. I know we're not all, I know it's not something that people are all watching, but you can watch any TV program and there isn't bigger body people represented. People in larger bodies, people who are not attractive are devalued, dehumanized in the fact that we're not represented. It's just not there. Yeah. So we find it hard to be what we can't see, and it's very difficult. That I think that is where a lot of the fear comes from, because if we kind of pick up our beauty standards, we'll never be enough. None of us are, and the beauty standard keeps changing. So even if we got to that point, even if we changed our hair and we change our body and do all those things at great cost and expense to ourselves and our mental health, even if we do all of those things, it then moves again. Yeah. And it's just really this, what I try and get people to do is kind of, let's peel it back. Let's see what is your belief around, why you should be a certain way, why you should look a certain way, why you should talk a certain way. There's so much underneath it all. And it all kind of comes back from our experiences in the world and how we've been socialized.
Yeah. I mean, even from a point of view that, it's those stories that we tell ourselves as well. I've been working with a wedding supplier that has, I suppose, listening to you, it is like a body image, person image, and their head stories are, I'm too old, I can't get hold of the tech, I can't, and therefore because I don't understand the tech, I can't go visible. And actually, when you peel it back, that is sort of that imposter syndrome and that inner critic coming out, and actually that's been their story and barrier to actually learning and allowing themselves to fail, to make mistakes, to learn the tech. It takes effort, it takes trauma sometimes, but it's sort of allowing yourself to fail and giving yourself the opportunity to learn. That learning process, you will fail, and we've got to start being okay with that. I know that's slightly off, but it's again that those stories that have been learned over time, and actually we need to start challenging those and actually see why our inner critic is telling us that we're not good enough in whatever capacity, sort of thing.
Yeah, because why do we feel that we've got to be good at all the tech straight away? Why do we feel that we have to, have things in place and perfect before we give it a go? Before we came on air, I was explaining to you how I'd uploaded a TikTok video and had to delete it because it didn't work. I messed up something. I pressed something wrong and it went wrong. So I just deleted it and start again. And I think a lot of that comes from self-confidence. Again, having that confidence to play around and get it wrong. And I think when you kind of zoom out of like especially social media, you're like this tiny weeny little dot on the universe of social media. And that sounds horrible, because I know that many people want to feel like they're being seen on social media and that their stuff is being seen, but it is a busy place. It's a busy marketplace. There's lots of people there, you know, sharing personal stuff and business stuff. And to stand out in that, it takes consistency and keeping to, you know, to keep going and keep building that resilience. And some of that will be about making mistakes, but we're not invited to play. And I think this is how we're socialized. We're not invited to play and be okay with getting things wrong. We're also we see people drop off the radar when they hit a certain age. You know, I'm 42, and you know, most of my clients are sort of my age group and older, because that is the sort of age where we lose a lot more of our confidence. And, you know, social media, again, doesn't help playing into that narrative that we are, you know, somehow past it and invisible. And it's down to beauty culture. We're allowed to age as long as we don't look like we have. And it's utter rubbish. It's utter rubbish. You know, but whilst we're holding ourselves back and we're not putting ourselves out there, there's, you know, we're not representing the women who are actually desperate to start their own business. And actually it's a great time of life to do it. But we hold ourselves back because we don't see it.
Definitely. Yeah. And so for clients that you've worked with, Tamsin, or just generally, where would you suggest, you know, someone that knows the importance of becoming more visible, becoming the face of your business, but has one or many of these elements that we've talked about, where would you sort of advise to start?
Yeah, so a couple of things. I think the first place to start, you think about like self-worth and self-confidence. It's a bit like a house. If you've got no foundations for it to build on, it's going to be really, really kind of rocky. You're going to be a bit kind of faking it till you make it. And actually, I think a lot of that comes through. And if you don't really believe that you are enough, and if you don't really kind of feel that self-worth, it's going to shine through, it's going to show through. So really what I would get somebody to start with is to start thinking about, you know, what do I think of myself? What is the honest thing? What is the thing that I most struggle with? And start just being really curious. You know, what is it that's stopping me from showing up? Maybe journaling on it. And just kind of peel it back. Like, where does that belief come from? Is it true? Is it kind? Is it really like useful to me? You know, whatever it might be you've got a hang up on a particular body part, or, you know, I've had clients who have had a really, really sticking point over their stomach, which is a really good one for me to help people with, because that was my story too. And something that I have helped people kind of, you know, heal from. Because they were worried about showing up in their business and being judged for that because of the type of business they had. And they felt that it should look a certain way. Again, it's getting very clear on your shoulds. What do you think you should look like? And where does that idea come from? Because once you start pulling on that thread a little bit, you find that actually it's not your belief. It's coming from somewhere else. I had another client who had a medical issue during giving birth to a son, which had left her with like a problem with her eye, and it had changed her eye. It's kind of like a longer, more complicated story, but she really struggled with that, like accepting that and not wanting to hide it and everything. And she didn't want to get her branding pictures done. She didn't want to show up on social media. And when she did, she had to make sure like everything was perfect. It's almost like a compensation for for that part that she felt had like wasn't perfect, so to speak. And actually, once she sort of made peace with the fact that she hadn't done anything wrong, she wasn't broken, you know, and none of us are perfect. And that's the whole point, you know. Actually, let's just show up as our imperfect selves and be happy with that, because you know, and it's really changed how she shows up in her business. She had her branding pictures done. She goes live all the time. She's not worrying about it now. She's not waiting until she's got all her makeup on, because we've pulled on that thread. And that's how I kind of like to talk about it. We're pulling on those threads. Let's have a look at what are all your shoulds around how you should be, and specifically about how you think you should look. Yeah.
Gosh, I even can see some work that I need to do with regards to that. And I'm sure, you know, it's a work in progress, isn't it? There's so many elements to that, but But yeah, I mean, the freedom that you must feel when that isn't an issue is pretty crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it
Pretty
is really
big.
crazy. Yeah, it is. It's pretty big. And it's almost something you can't really imagine.
Yeah.
You just can't imagine it. You can't imagine like never worrying about what you look like. And some people internalize that or translate that as just giving up. Or like, I'll just never wear makeup again. I'll just eat pizza all day and I won't care about what I look like. That's not actually what happens. It's actually about deeply valuing yourself, however happens to however your body shows up, because we're not as in control of how we look or our bodies as we think we are. We're just not. Our bodies, especially as women, change over time. We're taught we're supposed to look like we're 18 when we're 55, and it isn't necessary, and it isn't true. No. And so many of us aren't having that experience, but we all still think we should be. And we blame ourselves, and that's diet culture. We blame ourselves because we don't still look young. We still don't look, like we did when we were sort of 18, and we haven't worked hard enough to maintain that look. And we internalize that as our own failing and our own thing. And that's where I come in to dismantle that completely. Let's turn that on its head. That's just a belief you've been socialized to think.
Gosh, it's big. And just listening to you, Tamsin, my thought is if you need to like reframe it, and for me, I'm a very much a people pleaser, and that's where I get my motivation. And actually, I'm sat here thinking, or listening to you thinking, if I am able to show up as my authentic self and not care, and whether it's makeup or not, a makeup or a not makeup day, etc., actually I'm then role modeling that to my small audience, and trying to normalize it. And I suppose the more people that feel empowered to do that, you are then setting a precedent for people that are looking at your content. And actually, how refreshing is it when you actually see someone not perfect, messing it up a little bit, in their own world, zesting with life, and just feeling comfortable about what they're chatting about, not worrying if they're saying or whatever is your thing. I'm totally with that. So I think that's my takeaway. I think I want to be role modeling that freedom.
And that was going to be my second tip, really, is about showing up as your authentic self, like because once you kind of you take away all the things that you thought you should be, and you get really clear on the things that are holding you back, you can actually start focusing on, well, what really makes me tick, and how do I incorporate that into my business and my work? Because people want to work with different people that connect with them. I'm very spiritual. I'm very open about that. I love all things kind of oracle cards, and there was incense burning before I came on, but it was smoking me out because I had to shut the windows because of the noise of the road. So I turn it off. But things like that, you only have to step into my world for like 2 minutes to like know that I'm into crystals and all that kind of stuff. And that connects and resonates with people. I have a dog and I have kids. Again, it connects and resonates with people. And it's not just about showing them that in a perfect way. It's about, just showing it frequently and letting people into your life. And the main way we do that is by talking to them. All my content creation, pretty much it's an 80-20 split between like talking, whether that's to the camera, whether that's on, I don't have a Facebook group, but I do it on Instagram, I do it on TikTok, but I also do it through my podcast, and connecting with people who aren't necessarily there to talk back to you, and going on other people's podcasts. Again, another thing, like, how many of us in our new businesses are reaching out and going, can I come on your podcast, please? Has anybody got a podcast that I would be? We're not putting ourselves out there. And this is something that this is my content creation. This is how I connect with potential clients. So that is what I do. I do that all the time. And yes, people sometimes will say, oh no, well, that's not something that's going to work for my podcast particularly. Sometimes I'm the person who says, actually, your podcast doesn't align with my values, doesn't align with my beliefs, and therefore it's not for me. Reaching out to other guests, all those things. It's all about putting yourself out there and being able to do that. Like I said, like I have an 80%, it's my voice, it's my face. And then 20% of that is maybe the silly stuff where I'm eating random bits of cake, or I'm I was randomly eating some lettuce and stuff yesterday on a reel that I was doing, because it's funny, because I have a sense of humor, and because I find it funny, and I do like some of the trending sounds, but I don't rely on that to connect with my audience, because you're not talking to them. It is funny, but it's also forgettable. Yeah. And it's taken me a while to get to that, to realize that's where my strength is actually connecting with people. But I don't think I could have done that back in my dieting days, where I just thought I was the worst person in the world, and it was all my fault, that I was a big girl and it was all my fault, and that I had failed myself somehow. I could never have done what I do now in any way, shape or form. So
and so once someone has really delved deep into what their authentic self looks like, feels like, what then? What could they be looking at to do next once they've got confident around, okay, this is who I truly am? What sort of activities or things that can they take forward then to start testing out, becoming that face of their business?
Yeah, I mean, I think for anyone wanting to kind of take that next step, like you say, when they get to that point where they think, okay, I know what I'm about and I want to start bringing that into my business, just get talking, just start speaking into your camera. And do you know what? There's little ways that I have built confidence in doing that, because you do worry about stumbling, forgetting what you're going to say. I mean, I'm perimenopausal. I forget things all the time. That's why I've got notes in front of me now. Like, be okay with having notes. Yeah. You saw me give a speech at a networking event, and I haven't given a speech since I was back in my corporate job, which was like over 3 years ago. And to stand there and do that, like it's, and I had notes, because that's okay. Like, there's a really great book actually called How to Own the Room. And it talks about like being okay. Like Joan Rivers, the perfect example is Joan Rivers she was a stand-up comedian. She would do comedy shows, but she had an auto cue. And she was like, this is fine. This is how I work best. It's still giving you what you want. You still want me to be funny. But in order for me to deliver you that, I have to have this in. So when I started first making like longer videos and connecting with my audience, I used an app which had like an auto cue on it, which just helped me stop rambling and get to the point, which is what I wanted. Now I don't need it so much because I've used it so much, but it allowed me to retake. Lots of different things like that. Just get really used to seeing yourself. And
does that come up on your phone then, does it? So
you type in the script, and then as you record it, kind of, it's free. I'll send you the link. It scrolls up as you're talking. So and if you stop talking, it stops. Wow. So, and you can split it up and you can do different things. I think things like that give you more confidence than adding filters and all that kind of stuff, because realistically, you're adding like a false layer on top of yourself, and people want to see the real you. They want you to show up when things aren't perfect, because it helps them recognize that they're not perfect. So just be okay with asking for help. You were talking about a lady sort of struggling with tech. Ask for help. Ask for help, and just start looking for opportunities to flex that muscle as such, and then you'll start to build it, and you'll realize that the world doesn't come crashing down. And actually, we have, like I talked about in that, is sort of inner critic. We have that inner critic that says to us, oh my gosh, you're too much. And I use the example of my email list, because most of us, if we've got a small business, we're told have an email list. It's the way you connect with people. Right, great, fine, have an email list. And then you get people like unsubscribe when you send something, and you're like, oh my gosh, like what did I say wrong? And then you get people subscribing, and you're like, oh my gosh, what do they want? Like, you can't win, because your inner critic is always going to be having a go at you based on what you think about yourself. So just start pushing those boundaries and just really challenge it, and play with it. Give yourself permission to be messy and imperfect and a bit rubbish at it.
I love that. Something I personally struggle with, but it's so true. Like, what do we say to our toddlers when they're learning? Like, it is messy. There is tantrums and, shouting at the screen, but that's the only way that we will get more comfortable, more confident, and actually our content is truly authentic. And that's what ultimately people want to see, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I remember spending hours in Canva creating these posts with like the perfect wording and all this kind of stuff. And it would take me days and then I wouldn't post it because it didn't sound right. And I took a tip from another marketing expert who was just writing it in notes with none of the drawings or colors, no branding colors, nothing, and just photographing the notes that she'd made in her phone. And I started doing that just to get more comfortable with just saying the flipping thing I want to say. And once I had done that, it became a lot easier to go back to putting it in branding colors and all that kind of stuff. And I now flip between the two. I don't care what my grid looks like. And I'm not saying this is for everybody, but for me, it's more about what is it I need to say today? What message is it that I'm really passionate about? What do I really deeply care about? And what is the best way for me to say that? Is it best I say it on video? Is it best I say it in a word thing? Like, it's not really like what's best for my grid or how pretty can I make it look. And I realize you're like talking to people who are in wedding businesses, it needs to be maybe quite aesthetically pleasing. But again, why do we feel that way, that it's got to look a certain way and be that way?
And actually, our work will speak for itself, there'll be a mix of posts that you share, isn't it? But at the end of the day, when we're looking to share a post that is positioning ourselves as that business owner to build that connection, that know, like, and trust, that can be messy, and I think we are shying away from doing that more. We're a lot more comfortable at sharing the beautiful shoots, the editorials that we've been part of, the real weddings that have a beautiful story to them. Don't get me wrong, but there is a piece of the pie that we are leaving out without feeling confident enough to get in front of that camera, or so like true. You said, the written version, if that's somewhere that you want to start. Get messy, be authentic, and just play.
Just play. And if you need to practice that play, then practice that play. But if you're frozen on the spot, recognize it's not going to push you forward. It's not going to take you where you want to be.
Tamsin, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing a bit more about your world. I've taken away loads from our conversation, so I'm sure our audience has too. Where can people find more about you, Tamsin, and what you do?
So I'm mainly on Instagram. Because it just seems to be my playground. I've recently moved over to TikTok, but I am using it sort of now and again when I feel like it. But Instagram is my home, and it's just at Tamsin_Broster. And I have a website of my name, just tamsinbroster.co.uk. You can find me there.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure, and all the best with your exciting ventures coming up. Take it steady.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
My new free downloadable activity pack is now available. Get visible, build connection. The free resource provides you with everything you need to plan one whole year's worth of face of your business online content to build an authentic brand that aligns with you as a person and builds that all-important connection between you and your audience. The activity pack includes a bonus template for you to take away and plan your 4 years worth of face of your business posts, taking out the overwhelm and kicking you into action. So what are you waiting for? Download yours today at weddingbusinessgrowthcoach.com/biz-resources. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and took away some wedding business building value. Make sure you subscribe to the Wedding Business Growth Coach podcast to ensure you get notified every time a new episode goes live. See you next time.